Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we grab that stack of sources you send in, we dive deep, and really try to pull out the key stuff.
Yeah, the insights, the surprising bits, the things that matter, so you don't have to wade through it all.
Exactly. And today we're digging into some, well, pretty extraordinary material. It's excerpts from a document all about reported dreams, visions, and miracles happening in Muslim communities.
That's right. And these sources, they give a really fascinating glimpse, supposedly, into how people in various Muslim contexts are encountering spiritual experiences.
Experiences that seem to get them exploring or sometimes even embracing Christianity.
Yeah, we're talking about what these documents frame as like direct divine intervention.
So our mission, just to be clear, is to understand, based only on what's in these sources, what's the nature of these reported experiences, what's their impact according to the material.
We're looking at what the sources say about how God is reportedly moving, often in really dramatic, creative ways.
Especially, it seems, in places where getting hold of, Bibles or finding Christians is really, really difficult, limited access.
Exactly. And the material, it sort of kicks off with this principle. It's shared by a regional Christian leader named Wajay, quoted here.
Okay.
He basically says, drawing from the Bible, that when believers actually go out to reach people about Jesus, well, miracles are supposed to follow. It's presented as a biblical principle meant to be applied.
Right. And the sources immediately put that principle into a really challenging context.
Yeah, they paint a picture of many Muslims globally having very limited access, maybe no access to Bibles in their own language.
No churches nearby, perhaps no Christians they even know personally, minimal media.
Just environments where, learning about Christianity through normal ways is almost impossible.
So the claim running through these documents is, well, in those situations where the usual channels are blocked, God is reportedly using these more direct methods, supernatural communication.
Personal, yeah. Dreams, visions, that sort of thing.
Which brings us right to it. Dreams and visions. The sources do remind us this isn't entirely new. The Bible itself has stories, right? God using dreams, visions, voices.
Even angelic visits, yeah. It's got historical precedent in the text they reference.
But what's striking, according to this material, is how often it's reportedly happening now, specifically among Muslims.
Right. There's this one data point they cite that's quite compelling.
What's that?
Among former Muslim leaders, people who are now planting churches, a really significant number, 40%.
40?
Yeah, 40% reported that the thing that first got them even thinking about it, starting to search, was a dream or a vision of Jesus.
Isa al-Masih.
Okay, 40% is not just, a couple of anecdotes. That suggests something potentially quite widespread, at least according to these accounts.
And the sources really dig into what these dreams are supposedly like.
How so?
They emphasize that each one seems unique, tailored to the person, the message, the setting in the dream. It's always different, always relevant to their life, their questions.
So no two are exactly alike. They say out of hundreds of stories collected, they haven't found two identical dreams.
Interesting. But are there common threads, themes?
Yes, definitely. Common themes do pop up. You get reports of Jesus appearing, maybe offering encouragement or a sense of peace they were looking for.
Okay.
Some dreams are described as incredibly vivid, almost symbolic, like setting up comparisons between the Quran and the Bible.
Stark comparisons.
Sometimes stark, yeah. Others are reported more like visions, glimpses of heaven or hell, acting as a kind of warning, maybe.
And prompt to reconsider things.
Exactly. And it's not just Muslims having these experiences according to the text.
Oh.
There's one example given of a Christian man who had this dream that basically called him into ministry for Muslims.
What did he see?
He described seeing Muslims in these really worn-out tents, drinking dirty water, just a picture of real need.
Right. Desperation.
And this powerful wind comes, sweeps it all away, and it's replaced by this pure white tent, pure flowing water. Very visual.
Wow. A clear image of need and provision.
Yeah. And the reported effect of all these dreams, whether it's the 40% stat or these individual stories, seems crucial.
What effect is that?
The sources suggest they consistently spark questions, deep questions in the dreamer's heart, their mind.
Gets them thinking, searching.
Precisely. Which, the material argues, points to this vital need for Christians to just be available, to be around.
So when someone has one of these dreams, there's someone they can talk to, someone to help figure it out.
Exactly. To help them understand what it might mean, where they can find answers.
Okay, to make this more concrete, the sources share a really detailed personal story. Yusuf's story.
Right, and this is presented as a kind of prime example, this direct spiritual encounter leading to this huge life change.
Tell us about his background.
Well, Yusuf was raised in a very, very devout Muslim family, deeply committed. His father apparently even predicted he'd become a marabout.
Which is like a Muslim priest or scholar.
Yeah, essentially, a respected religious figure. So his whole identity, his family, his culture, his future, it was all tied up with Islam.
And he embraced it.
Fully. By the time he was in high school, university, he wasn't just practicing. He was a militant leader in the Students' Muslim Association. Really active.
Okay, so not exactly open to other ideas.
Not at all. So when he first ran into Christians talking about Jesus being the Son of God, his reaction wasn't curiosity.
No.
It was anger. He saw it as totally blasphemous. He wanted to argue, to fight, prove them wrong, bring them back to Islam.
Right. Defense mode.
Completely.
Yeah.
But despite that, he actually agreed to meet this one guy, a former Muslim who'd become a Christian. Yusuf's plan was still to debate him, win him back.
But the meeting didn't go as planned.
Not quite. The man, interestingly, refused to get drawn into an argument right away. Wouldn't answer Yusuf's questions directly at first.
What did he do instead?
He just gave him some materials, a book, some booklets, full of testimonies from the Muslims who'd converted.
And anything else?
Yeah, something Yusuf found, well, initially quite insulting. The man asked to pray for him.
Yeah.
And then he just prayed. Right there, sitting down, shoes on, in French. None of the ritual preparation Yusuf expected.
That must have seemed disrespectful from Yusuf's perspective.
Apparently so. But then the man gave him this really interesting challenge.
What was it?
He said, look, when you do your daily Muslim prayers, the salat, after you finish the formal Arabic part, pause.
Yeah.
And just pray. In your own language, your mother tongue.
Just talk to God directly.
Yeah. Ask God directly to reveal himself, show you the truth, whatever it is.
Wow. That's a bold challenge. How did Yusuf react?
Well, his initial reaction was pretty predictable. He went home, tossed the books aside, done with it.
Right.
But then a few days later, he's studying late, trying to stay awake, and he picks up the book, just thinking it might bore him enough to make him sleepy.
Did it work?
Nope. He ended up reading the whole thing, and the booklets too. And what reportedly just shocked him was the assurance.
Assurance of what?
Assurance of salvation. These people, in the testimonies, they wrote with such certainty that they were saved, that they had eternal life through Jesus.
And that clashed with his own understanding.
Sharply. Because as a Muslim, he believed, his afterlife depended on his works, weighed against his bad deeds, and ultimately God's predestination.
So no way to know for sure.
No way to know if he'd done enough good or if he was even chosen for paradise. No guarantee, no assurance.
That must have been unsettling, reading those testimonies then.
It really sparked something, a real search. He went back to the Quran, looking hard for verses that could give him that same kind of certainty.
Did he find any?
He reports finding none that gave him that specific assurance of salvation. But he did find some surprising verses about Jesus.
Surprising how?
Incredibly positive descriptions, calling Jesus the Word of God, the Messiah, describing him as honored, sinless, a sign, a mercy from God.
So that created confusion?
Big time. He took his questions about assurance, about these specific verses on Jesus to the people he trusted, mosque elders, his teachers.
And they helped him sort it out?
Reportedly, no. They got angry, defensive maybe, didn't give him answers.
So he felt stuck?
Yeah, confused, but not ready to leave Islam. So he just decided, okay, I'll just stop asking. I'll just stay Muslim, even with the confusion.
But the story doesn't end there.
Not at all. The account describes this really dramatic turning point that happened during Ramadan.
A significant time.
Right. He woke up early one morning and was just suddenly hit with this awful, profound anguish. A feeling of being totally lost, certain he was doomed, headed for hell.
That sounds terrifying.
Intense distress. But then, after several minutes of this, it just lifted and was replaced by a voice.
A voice. Audible.
He says he heard it both outside and inside himself, clear as anything, saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Whoa. He must have recognized those words.
He did, from the Bible. He remembered a Christian roommate he once had. His first thought was, I'm going crazy.
Understandable reaction.
And he resisted. He remembered his father warning him about Christian writings, that they could be deceptive, have strange powers. He worried he brought this on himself by reading those testimonies.
So fear and resistance.
Yeah. But the account says the voice wasn't harsh or demanding. It had this combination of, immense authority, but also incredible softness.
Authority and softness.
And it was that quality, reportedly, that finally made him yield, made him accept what the voice was saying.
So what happened next?
3 days later, he went back to see that Christian man, the former Muslim. They talked. Yusuf came to understand, the Christian concept of sin, that his own good works couldn't save him.
And he decided.
He decided to give his life to Jesus, right there.
And the assurance piece. Did he find that?
Reportedly, yes. Immediately. He mentions finding 1 John 5, verses 11 to 13, about God giving eternal life through his Son.
He who has the Son has life.
Exactly. He describes feeling this immediate wave of assurance, this overwhelming joy he'd been searching for.
That's quite a journey. Did it stop there?
No. He started sharing his faith, got involved in trying to plant churches among Muslims, faced a lot of struggles at first, discouragement. That's part of the story, too.
It's not always easy.
Definitely not.
Okay.
But then he learned about disciple-making movement principles, started using those methods.
And the result?
The story concludes with him reporting that since then, he's seen hundreds of new churches planted. It's presented as this amazing ripple effect, all starting from that very personal encounter with the voice.
Powerful story. Okay, so moving beyond dreams and that specific voice encounter, the sources also talk about signs and wonders, right? Healings, deliverances.
Yeah, they shift focus a bit to the reported role of miracles accompanying the work.
And is there data on this too?
There's some observational data cited, specifically from ministry efforts in parts of Africa between 2008 and 2011.
Okay, what did they observe?
The claim is pretty remarkable. In those areas during that time, somewhere between 50 and 70% of the new churches planted among Muslims.
50 to 70%?
Yeah. Were reported to have happened in part because of signs and wonders that accompanied the ministry efforts.
Wow. Not just a small factor then.
Apparently quite significant, especially, they noted, in areas that were considered more resistant or even violent.
Interesting. And when did these reported miracles happen? Was there a pattern?
It seems varied, according to the account. Sometimes, boom, right on the first day someone went into a community. Other times during, regular Bible studies.
Okay.
Sometimes specifically right before people were going to be baptized. And they're clear, sometimes they didn't happen at all. It wasn't automatic.
Right. So the conclusion the workers drew from this.
Across the board, regardless of maybe their specific theological background, the conclusion reported was God is moving, dramatically, creatively, showing his love and power among Muslim peoples today.
They saw these not as just footnotes, but as integral.
Yeah, integral to the process they were seeing unfold, according to those reporting it.
But it's not just the miracles, right? The sources mention effort, too.
Absolutely. They really stress that these reported miracles don't happen in a vacuum. They're connected to people praying consistently, intercessors, missionaries, putting in the time, the effort, building relationships.
So it's not a replacement for the work.
Not at all. The material uses this phrase like a jet-propelled boost. It accelerates things, gives momentum, but doesn't substitute for all that foundational work.
Got it. A boost, not a shortcut.
Exactly. And there's another story they share that really illustrates this, particularly how a reported miracle seemed to just override human plans. The story of Desta.
Desta. Okay, what happened with him?
So Desta was an experienced church planter. He was trying out a new method, and he had his map, planning his road.
Right.
And there was this one specific village on the map he had deliberately marked. Avoid.
Avoid. Why?
Because it was known to be really intensely Islamic, very resistant, even dangerous. So strategically, based on his method and safety concerns, the plan was go around it.
Makes sense.
But that plan got completely derailed. His motorcycle broke down.
Oh.
Smack bang in the middle of the very village he was trying to avoid.
Oh, you're kidding.
Nope. Right there. You can imagine he's frustrated, feeling stuck, hostile place, can't even ask for water comfortably.
Yeah, not ideal.
And right then, in that moment of frustration, he hears this loud wailing sound.
Wailing.
Finds out the village chief's wife had just died moments before.
Wow. Okay.
And despite being scared, despite not speaking the local dialect well, he reports feeling this distinct nudge, this internal voice saying, go see what's happening.
Even though it seemed risky.
Yeah, his conscience was pushing him. He felt he had to obey, even though fear was telling him otherwise.
So he goes over.
He pushes his way through the villagers who were starting their funeral ceremonies trying to stop him.
Okay.
And then he gets near the body, and he feels this thought, this impression. Pray for her. Pray for this dead woman.
Pray for a dead person to come back to life. Had he ever done that?
Never. He describes this intense internal struggle, thinking, what if I pray and nothing happens in this village? The risk felt enormous.
I can only imagine.
But the feeling, the urgency to pray, was reportedly just overwhelming. He felt he had absolutely no choice.
So he did it.
He did. He started praying loudly, intensely, for over an hour, the account says, just calling on God, calling on Jesus, asking him to revive her, like in the Bible stories.
An hour of praying over a dead body in a potentially hostile village.
Yeah. And then breakthrough. He reports feeling warmth come into her hand. Then he feels a heartbeat.
No way.
He keeps praying. The crowd's reaction is mixed, some angry, some starting to murmur that maybe God sent this man. And then the woman opens her eyes.
She opens her eyes.
Sits up, asks for water.
Goodness. What did the crowd do?
Just shock. Shouting at first, then apparently dead silence as they try to process it. And their focus just completely shifted. From her to Destet and his companion.
What did they say?
They started calling them wonderful men, saying they'd raised the dead.
Okay, that's a turning point.
Huge.
Yeah.
And right then, Destet says he heard the Spirit of God very clearly tell them who Jesus is.
So he didn't take the credit.
No, his message was immediate. It wasn't us. It was Jesus. This is God's power, his free gift of salvation through Jesus.
How did the village react to that?
Well, they made him stay the night. Probably to make sure the woman was really okay.
And she was.
She was. Reportedly still alive today, according to the source.
Amazing. What about the chief? The husband?
His reaction, as reported, is incredible. He basically said, look, I was born a Muslim. I'm not leaving Islam myself.
Okay.
But he said, because your Jesus raised my wife from the dead, I believe in him.
Wow.
And then he did something huge. He lifted the ban on Christianity in the village. Said anyone who wanted to could become Christian now. No repercussions.
He just declared it.
And he offered them the community school building to use for prayer meetings.
Unbelievable. So Destet must have felt.
He reported feeling this confirmation from God. This is why you were stopped here. This is why the bike broke down for this specific moment.
So they held a meeting.
Yeah. They gathered people at the school, invited anyone sick or in need to come for prayer.
And the result?
The immediate result reported. 76 people gave their lives to Jesus that day. A church planted. Right there.
76 people in the village he tried to avoid.
Exactly. And the final little detail. The motorcycle started right up. First try, right after all this.
Of course it did. And long term.
The sources claim that incident sparked something much bigger. That whole region, previously resistant, is now reportedly filled with many churches.
Wow. Just wow. Okay, so looking back over all this material we've unpacked,
Yeah.
we've seen quite a spectrum, haven't we? There's the data suggesting dreams and visions are a significant factor for leaders.
That 40% number.
Then the really deep dive into Yusuf's personal search, that anguish, the voice.
That quest for assurance.
And then these broader observations about signs and wonders illustrated so powerfully, so dramatically by Destet's story.
Yeah, the core theme, the assertion running through all these sources seems clear.
Which is?
That in places where normal access to Christian teaching is really restricted, God is reportedly using these, well, unconventional means.
Dramatic, creative.
Direct communication like dreams, confirming signs like healings, ways to bypass the usual barriers and reach people in Muslim communities.
And it really highlights, doesn't it, what the sources stress about being available.
Absolutely. Because when these reported encounters happen, people have questions, big questions. They need someone to help them process, understand, continue the journey.
It underlines that idea you mentioned earlier. Knowledge isn't just information.
Right. It's valuable when it's understood and applied. These divine initiatives, as reported, seem to create this spiritual openness, but it often needs that human response.
Yeah.
Someone present to explain, to guide, to disciple.
So after hearing all these accounts drawn straight from the sources, what really stands out to you, the listener?
Is it the sheer number suggested by the data on dreams, that 40% figure?
Or maybe it's Yusuf's very human struggle, that deep ache for assurance about eternity. Does that resonate?
Or perhaps it's the unexpected drama of Destet's story. Human plans just completely overturned by a broken motorcycle and, well, a miracle.
Yeah, and thinking about Destet, how does that reported breakdown, that unforeseen event, connect to being ready, being obedient, even when it's unexpected or scary?
What does it suggest about being in the right place? Maybe not because you planned it, but because circumstances or maybe something else put you there.
Definitely some compelling things to think about, drawn from these remarkable accounts. Thanks for diving deep with us today.